for them. He wasn't an employee of them. He did contract work as this forensic examiner. Plus, he was a huge Obama supporter and loyal. But Zullo called him and said, look, here's what I've got. Would you be interested in examining? And in his first answer to Mike Zullo, I will never do anything to hurt my president. He said that. And Zullo said, that's why I've called you. Now, that takes guts and integrity. I'm telling you. I thought Mike Zullo was crazy at first, but then the more he spoke, I realized this dude is for real. He's got some integrity. He's willing for his whole investigation to go down the toilet if there's something wrong, and thus it should. I mean, I don't want it to be a fake investigation either.
Right.
And I mean, I've got too much invested in ministry and law enforcement and radio and to ruin my whole reputation. So after I heard him through, I said, that's brilliant. So did he agree? He said, yes. And he said, now I told him, I said, you're not going to try to jimmy-jammy this report around now just to protect your president. He said, no, I love my president, but I'm not going to ruin my whole life's work over him if it's fake. He says, but I can tell you right now that thing's not fake. They wouldn't do that. That reminds me of 2007 me sitting there saying they wouldn't do that. So he's still pretty naive about all this. That's his president. He's supporting him. So he says, yeah, I'll take the case. He says, but I'm going to give you the truth. And Zullo said, that's all I want. And Zullo told him, he said, look, here's the bottom line. I'm not trying to get this man out of office. If I'm wrong, I need to know I'm wrong before I embarrass myself. He says, but here's what I found. I want you to look at it. So he ships it to him. The guy says, well, it'll be months. Zullo says, okay. Well, within a couple of weeks, he calls him up. He says, nail in the coffin, my friend. He said, this thing is as fake as the day is long. He says, it was absolutely produced from the ground up. Well, in the meantime, unbeknownst to him, Zullo had also done the same thing with a company in Europe, in Italy. This company, almost all of Europe's police and detective agencies employ this company to teach their officers how to do this, how to find out what's fake and what's not. Plus, they are certified to testify in the equivalent of the Supreme Courts of Europe. This guy is certified to testify and has before the Supreme Court of the United States. So you've got two reputable companies. He calls up Zullo and says, I'm going to provide it in writing, but you've got the coffin and the nail here. This is fake, and here's why. And he talks about the X, and he talks about the shifting and everything. He's done all the measurements. Okay, two different disciplines. This guy does it from old school research, which is very, very valid and works. These guys do it from the latest, greatest technological digital measurements. So Zullo not only uses this, this renowned company here, this renowned company here, who's a huge Obama supporter and who starts off by saying, I will never hurt my president, okay, who does old school research that still holds up in all the courts of the United States. These guys are doing it from this latest, greatest modern digital examination from Europe. They call him up, they provide an affidavit saying, Johanna Ani document was used to build from the ground up this document. And they said, we suspect other documents were too. It wasn't only Johanna Ani's, but the date stamps, these X's, the other information, it was used. And so Mike gets all that stuff up. He makes them sign affidavits. They basically give him copyright to it so they can't take it back later and change it. I mean, he really does his due diligence to make sure nobody can steal it.
And independently, they verify the same things.
Independently. They don't even know that each other is doing this.
So what was the time frame of this part of the investigation?
I don't remember exactly, but it was before the 2016 conference.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what happens is now he feels totally confident when he goes in 2016 to say, a company in the United States, company in Italy, verifies what you're getting ready to see and what your audience just saw. And he points up to the screen that this is accurate and this is the smoking gun to show that this document was built from the ground up. Now, I'm just going to say to your audience, and I'm not trying to be coy here because this is all still ongoing and may eventually come to a huge exposure at the federal level, but there's even more that they have. And even more people and more evidence and more witnesses, and I'm not at liberty to say, even though Sheriff Arpaio is not in office and I'm not an official deputy anymore, but just my own integrity and his integrity. I know a lot of what Arpaio and Zullo know. Now I can say this, to protect me, they have made sure that I don't know everything.
Well, that's important, yeah. But you're probably not going to answer this question. But as we're talking about all of this new information that you're not yet at liberty to discuss, but that with Donald Trump now pushing for an investigation into the investigators, could come full circle.
It could.
Back, including to the birth certificate. Is Donald Trump, and I know you probably can't answer me directly on this.
I'll answer you the best I can.
But is Donald Trump and the people around him, are they aware of this new information you're talking about, as well as, other than just maybe they saw it on the internet or something, are they aware of kind of the full meal deal here?
Okay. Let me use the words of Mike Zullo himself. Now, these may not be the exact quoted words, but paraphrased almost exactly. He was on my show doing an interview not too long ago wherein he said, and I will just agree with him based upon everything I know, that he's speaking accurately. It's a little coded language.
Read between the lines.
Read between the lines. But he said, very, very, very important people who are privy to the details. And Sheriff Arpaio and Mike Zullo are not the only ones that know all the details of this investigation. Other very important law enforcement figures now and congressional figures. But he said very, very, very important people have made direct contact. And Mike Zullo kind of laughed. He says, all I can tell you is very important people.
Yeah, okay.
And he says, and they know, and they're ready to pull the trigger on it and move forward, but it's a matter of timing.
Sure.
But they have said, more than likely, this is going to happen.
So what I'm thinking,
So that's my answer.
as a matter of timing, because we do know that, before 2016, Donald Trump was willing to raise this question, right?
He's the one that started the whole thing.
And he's been, he has said things about the criminality of the Clintons and different things, and
Yes.
he's hinting at what's going to be and all the people behind the Mueller report, which
Yes.
we can go to that in a moment.
Oh, that's very important.
But the 2020 election is coming, and if I'm in the president's shoes, I'm thinking, I don't give the Democrats reasons to start calling us a bunch of birther wackos.
Which they are doing anyway
They would,
against
yeah,
Trump.
but I wouldn't fuel that fire. I'm going to go through the 2020 election. If I'm reelected, this then can become a part of the fuller scope.
Yeah. Not in my official capacity with this investigation, but in my speculative capacity for several years, I've said the very same thing. And I would still think that's probably the way it would be done. But I want your audience to know, I'm not sitting here today with you guys or your audience trying to make any kind of promises that this will be done.
Sure.
People will go to jail. He will be exposed. I'm just telling you that it's huge, it's big, it's real, it's forensically verified. All the evidence is there. It's waiting for a hearing, and now the top people know, and they're saying we want to pull the trigger on this.
Okay, so now
So that's all I can say.
Okay.
And when and where and if it actually happens, I can't promise anything.
the Mueller report
Yes.
was recently published.
Yes.
It's a full-on dud as far as connecting Donald Trump
Yes.
to some kind of conspiracy.
Yes.
Russia, right?
Yeah.
But could be connected to information. You and Zullo have been out there talking about
Yes.
this for a while, but the Mueller report, what is this, unintended consequences? It verified, right?
Yeah, and this has just happened recently as we're producing this particular program. Here's the deal. So Donald Trump, who is the guy who poked his finger in the chest, please keep that in mind. This is the context. Remember, Hillary Clinton brings it up first, but then eventually Donald Trump's poking his finger. The thing goes up. It's proven false. We got all this information, forensics nations, press conferences, and now Donald Trump is president. He's the guy that can burn the house down. And while he's running, he's basically promising to do that.
He's going to.
He called it drain the swamp. What that means is I'm burning the house down. And at his conference rallies, what were everybody shouting? Lock her up, lock her up. Right. Well, he talks about Hillary until then they discover possibly they're trying to spy on him. They're tapping his phone lines is what he said. That was the old school method, but they were spying on his phones. Was it Rosenstein that offered to wear a wire? I can't remember the person was going to wear a wire, and they claim he never did, but we knew leaks were coming out of the White House. So all of this is building. And Donald Trump is now furious. Then the Mueller investigation starts. Now we found out that was already beginning in its latency form in January. While I'm not in this, it's not about me, but I'm saying about the time I'm opening one of his rallies, Washington, D.C. is already conspiring to burn him down. I mean, this is surreal to
And they're
think
talking about insurance policies. One of the
Insurance-
FISA judges now saying they lied to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, I'm going to skip ahead, then I'm going to come back, and because this is probably the most fascinating thing of everything we're going to say today. But please, folks, think of this. If you have any doubts at all about this birth certificate maybe being fake, these are the same people that went to Russia and faked a dossier.
Right.
Right.
And then lied to a FISA court judge several times to gain warrants to spy on a duly elected president. You know, this is like, Watergate is like romper room.
It is.
is.
Oh,
This
it's
is-
not.
It's
Yeah.
just, it's child's play. Now I feel like we should go back and apologize to Nixon.
Yeah.
You know, and say, you didn't have to resign over that. I mean, look at this. And nobody's even getting a slap on the hand over
Right.
this. So if they would do that, why wouldn't they, if they know that their man is a complete fraud, why wouldn't they produce a document, one singular document, take a real one and transfer some information, quickly produce it because Trump's doing this and Corsi's getting his book out, and then they say, let's go kill Osama. We know where he's at. Let's do that. Change the news cycle, put the birth certificate up there. Nobody will ever question it. Nobody will look, or we'll call them racist. But then there's this sheriff that's crazy enough to do it, and he starts burning the house down. Well, we come back. Here's Trump. He's in office. Now, see, Arpaio and I and Zullo, we were calling each other during this time when the Mueller investigation first started. We were all agreeing that Mueller investigation is not about the Russian collusion. It's about this birth certificate. They know that now the man that knows is sitting on top of the power of the U.S. government to burn this down. And,
Well,
and
it
if
could-
this,
Yeah, it could essentially uncover the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people.
and who was it
right.
done by? The Socialist Democrats.
Right.
Yeah.
They will never be elected to office again. They know that. They got to get this man out of office. They got to get him out. And plan A, get him out, burn him down. If we can put him in prison, wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they were saying.
Sure.
Or impeach him, get him out of office in shame, burn him down. If we can't do that, then we use this, we make it drag out for years so we can discredit him, put doubt in people's mind. Plus, we can cover up our sin
Right.
with official reports. And this is what I'm getting ready to release to your audience. With official reports from an official investigation, we can take facts and we can skew them just enough that we hide what we did. And this is what happened with the Mueller report that I'm getting ready to disclose to your audience and that Mike Zullo attested to. And you will hear his voice in just a few minutes on an interview with me just not too long back. But here's what happened. So the Mueller report goes on and on and on. The whole time Trump is saying, this is a witch hunt. I didn't do this. And he knows it. He knows it. That's why he cooperated fully.
Sure.
He turned over. He says, I will not use
There's nothing to
presidential executive privilege. All my employees can go testify, whatever. You're not going to find anything. I didn't do this. This is fake. Like the birth certificate. It's fake. Same people that fake the birth certificate are faking this. He didn't say that. But, I mean, this is what Arpaio and Zullo and I are saying. We're
Right.
saying we know what this is about. In the meantime, the Mueller investigation is finally over. It's turned over to the DOJ. Barr is in there. He makes all of his reports. Finally, the redactions are made. It's released. Sometime back, just a week or so ago, at the time we're making this, I'm on the internet, and this headline caught my attention, and it said, 5 bombshell revelations of the Mueller report that you need to know. And I'm thinking, well, this is interesting. This will make good radio fodder, I'm going to see what it is. And I looked, and it was a left-wing liberal site, and I thought, that's even better. Let's see what they think the bombshells are. Bombshell number 1, Donald Trump, in the Mueller report reveals Donald Trump said he wanted Mueller out. Well, you can say whatever you want. How's that a
yeah,
bombshell?
but he didn't do it.
So, and I thought, this is a hit piece. This is just stupid. And I kept reading the 5. I got to number 4. It jumped off the page, slapped me in the face, because years before, we knew something related to this, and it became apparent to me that was in the Mueller report. Mueller used his office in that investigation and that report to cover the crimes that Zullo and Arpaio and I knew. And number 4 said, it is revealed in the Mueller report that the voting machine, the voting mechanism of Florida, the voting rolls, the Secretary of State that's over the voter, and the voting mechanism of Illinois were breached and compromised meaning votes were manipulated and everything, by the Russians. Now, to people who don't know what I know and what Zulo knows and what Arpaio knows, and what the CIA whistleblower told us, when I say us, I mean, I talked to the guy a couple times. I'm not the investigator. I just want to make that clear. But I'm saying us because I was a part of all this information flow. What that CIA investigator told us and showed Arpaio and Zulo for months, and then they got him FBI immunity with an attorney, Larry Klayman, who's testified before the Supreme Court, actually was successful against Bill Clinton. I mean, this high-powered lawyer took him to the FBI, but James Comey was the director, and we didn't know at that time that he was compromised.
Involved, right.
Yeah. So they bring the CIA informant who built the equipment, who's got these reams. He's got hard drive after hard drive after hard drive that has, I'm going to use a number that people are going to think I'm misspeaking, but I'm not. 600 million pages of documentation, hard copy documentation, proving that that equipment was being used to spy on American citizens, important political, judges, congressmen, sheriffs, to bring them down and compromise them. I mean, there was a massive coup taking place, and the guys got the evidence. They took it to the FBI, and the FBI under James Comey buried it and sat on it. But now we have the text of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. They mentioned that by name in their text. They mentioned the CIA informant, that this information's up here, and Dennis Montgomery was one of them, and he's got other informants too, whistleblowers, and that's there. And so then James Baker, who was Jim Comey's attorney for the FBI, he was subpoenaed before Congress in a secret congressional hearing and investigation, wherein now the transcripts and documents have been released, where James Baker said they questioned him about American citizens being spied upon because, see, they'd been promising that would never happen with all this new equipment. They would never use it to spy. But now that all this has been revealed about Trump and spying on him, FISA courts, they're asking him, and he says, there was some that was done. And he says, well, did you ever have anybody else that made these accusations? And James Baker was honest. He said, well, yeah, we did. We had a whistleblower that went to the FBI. He's under immunity. And, well, what was that about? It was about spying on American citizens with software. And they're talking about this Dennis Montgomery, the same people that Strzok and Page were talking about. I'm telling you, these guys knew, they were involved in it. So the Mueller report comes out. I'm looking at this article that says these big bombshells, and one of them is that Florida's election system, that's near and dear to me because I'm in Florida. Florida's election system was compromised in several times. Well, the whistleblower showed us documentation where it was compromised in the 2012 election. Well, in that election, that's the election where Allen West was voted out from Florida.
Conservative congressman.
But the districts that he was in, there were more people voted than are registered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like
So
120%.
something happened. Yeah, something happened to the Florida voting records. Not only that, but do you remember the reports that were actually in mainstream media for a while that there were 4 or 5 huge precincts in Florida where Obama won with 100% of the vote, which has never happened in the history of the United States. No presidential candidate has ever garnered 100% of the vote in one district, much less 4 or 5.
Yeah, yeah.
Not only that, but in some of those districts, the vote count was more than there are people registered to vote.
Yeah, not even Saddam Hussein got 100% of the vote.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I mean, at least they made it look like, this is real.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so when we saw this, and I had Zulo on my radio show, and we're going to play this clip, I told him, I said, Mike, Mueller has used his investigation to cover up the crimes, the sins that they've, because here's what we know. I asked Zulo about this, and he says, well, we know these election systems were tampered with, but it wasn't the Russians, because here's what the guy told us. Now, Zulo doesn't say this, so I'm not going to play the clip yet. I mean, Zulo says this, but here's what they told us. The informant told us that the software he built was designed to breach in to any government agencies, including election systems, and to leave URL trails or not. They could back out, nobody knew they were there, and they could also make it look like it was breached by, his words, the Russians. This was years ago. The Russians. Why do the Russians keep coming in? Why is Hillary dealing with the Russians in Fusion 1? Why are they blaming Trump with the Russians? Why do they go to Russia to get a dossier? Why do they lie to a FISA court and say it's the Russians doing it? Because the internal agencies of the deep state possess the software to make it look like the Russians are doing this when it's them. And we knew this years ago. And we're trying to tell it on our radio programs, and we're being laughed at and called conspiracy theorists. But now we know. Now we're sitting here from the vantage point of knowing that all this documentation is in the FBI office, hard copy, and the guy that built the software is there with immunity, and now Donald Trump's in office, and now the Mueller report's finished, and now people are reporting on it saying, well, you know, the Mueller report says that the Russians broke into Florida's election system. Well, we knew Florida's election system had been broken into, but we knew it wasn't Russians. Now we're going to play this clip because our audience is now going to hear Mike Zullo and I talking about it on this interview. It's just about a minute too long, but you're going to hear him say, no, it wasn't the Russians, and he's going to explain some of the stuff I just explained.
Now, Mike, when you hear bombshells, you would think that they would say, okay, Trump, nothing there. No collusion. No, they went on down like, well, Trump was extremely upset when he learned of Mueller's appointment. How's that a bombshell, Mike Zullo? Of course he was. I mean, everybody knows that. But here's the thing. It goes down to point number 4. Russia hacked and extracted voter data from Illinois State Board of Elections and Florida county government and targeted private companies that help run elections. Russia hacked state governments to change the elections. Now, Mike, that's what this left-wing side is saying. But what was it you found out during the investigation and told this nation years ago, but nobody wanted to listen to us because we were just a bunch of conspiracy theorists?
Well, I'll tell you right now, it wasn't Russia.
No, it wasn't.
The information that we learned was that our CIA informant, who was the individual who built the software that did the breaching of computer systems across the globe and would harvest data surreptitiously and defeated firewalls and all kinds of other things. The only time in his career he was asked by, I believe it was the CIA, to breach the Florida voter rolls and download the entire database, which he did.
During an Obama, it was during an Obama election, wasn't it? Wasn't it his second?
Yeah, if you go back, if you remember, Allen West lost his district by like 120%.
Yeah.
It's just the percentage is too high for the amount of people in the district.
Right.
And he was crying foul about that as around that time.
Right.
And what was strange to him, it wasn't the first time he was asked to download things. They came back to him. And the only occurrence in his time there that he was asked to upload the contents of a drive back into the Florida voter rolls.
Mm-hmm. That was your
and
CIA
that was
informant.
done by him.
Mm-hmm. The informant, the guy that built the equipment, the software,
Yes.
Not a Russian, totally American, working for the CIA. He did it, and he told you, and he showed you, and proved that it was done, and told you that it was that software was made such that it would appear the Russians were doing it, when all along it was the deep state of the United States.
They can make it appear it comes from anywhere in the globe.
Yep.
And make you believe, through your analysis, that it's a foreign entity. And I believe it was Bill Binney, who was, I think your audience is familiar with him. He's one of the NSA whistleblowers that built the software that actually grabs all the information, and they had a Fourth Amendment protection in it, and down the road that got wiped out, and they blew the whistle, and they destroyed these guys' lives. But he was an NSA employee building this for the government, and I verified that very claim with him.
Mm-hmm.
It was also Bill Binney that did some work when you talk about the stolen emails, that they're still trying to say Russia stole and hacked the Clinton emails, and WikiLeaks was part of that.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Bill Binney did the work, and there's time allotted for transmission of digital content across miles. In other words, if you were going to breach from Italy to Hawaii, it's going to take so many milliseconds for that information to come back and forth. And what he has determined is the download speed did not come from anywhere like that. The download speed went from the computer system of the DNC to a thumb drive or a hard drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was nothing anywhere else.
Yeah.
Now, that's going to take the WikiLeaks thing off the table.
Yep.
Now, isn't it amazing how they're blowing up on Russia collusion, and now they decide it's time to get Assange?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just another cover.
Yes. And
Everything I believe that they are doing here, Carl, is to cover
That's
their
right.
dirty deeds.
That's right. This bombshell revelation that Russians hacked the Florida and Illinois Board of Elections to swing elections. You and I've known for years that ain't Russia. But yet the Mueller report claims it's Russia, and Mueller knows it's not. So what are they doing? They're covering it up.
Correct.
They're covering their own dirty deeds.
You know, it would seem that if the Russians had any kind of skill at all at this sort of electronic spycraft, they would be able to pull out of a system after hacking it without leaving a trace. So that anyone who's leaving a trace, you have to be, okay, is this, are they really that incompetent, or is this somebody trying to put the blame on somebody else?
Yeah, well,
I mean, that's my first thought.
The guy that invented the software says
Yes.
they're not really that incompetent. It is the deep state trying to put the blame on somebody else to cover their tracks.
And this is Dennis Montgomery, the
Dennis
fellow who's-
Montgomery
okay.
that said that. And again, there are other whistleblowers that came from NSA and other places, and we haven't released those names. But the bottom line is that this is one of the biggest bombshells. And the fact that several years ago, Mike Zullo was on my show, and he said, when all of this is over and done, he said, I don't know when this will be. He said, it might not even be in my lifetime before this ever comes. But this is back still under Obama administration. He says, but when all this is over and done, he says, mark my words, you can trace the footprints of all of this back to John Brennan.
Oh.
He said that, and we've got that archived, and that was on. Now, here's the other thing. Why did he say that? He said that one of the things the whistleblower showed him was that right before that birth certificate was put up on the website in 2011, this CIA whistleblower sat down and showed Arpaio and Zullo URL trails coming out of Washington, D.C., breaching into the Hawaii Department of Health records. From there, breaching into the University of Hawaii Historical Archives records. From there, gathering information, probably manipulating it, but from there, sending the information to a server in Jakarta, Indonesia. When they trace that URL, it's a CIA server. Then it went to CIA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Then, a few weeks later, the long-form birth certificate that we now know as a complete fabrication appears on the White House website.
Okay, so
That's why Zullo said this is going to trace back to John Brennan.
well, and I was sitting here wondering if I should raise this question.
You can raise it. It doesn't mean I'm going to answer it.
The Loretta Fuddy.
Well, just as a little background, she was the director of the Hawaii Department of Health. She died in a plane crash on December 11th of 2013. So this would be a little bit after the period. I mean, the long-form birth certificate was published on the White House.
2011.
Yeah, April of 2011. So this was sometime after that, and sometime after it became obvious that that was a fake. She would be the only person really who would know whether this was a legitimate document or not. She was on a plane, a small plane with, I believe, 9 other passengers that went down just off the coast of Hawaii.
She was the only one that died.
She died of, and it was not drowning. It was heart failure.
After, a day or so after,
Right,
right?
right. It was-
yeah,
yeah.
but they attributed it to the stress and everything.
Right. And to be clear, this incident with Loretta Fuddy was outside the scope of Mike Zullo's investigation.
It was outside the scope of their investigation,
Right.
but when you say, this guy is showing you where this is tracing from the university in Hawaii, the people that have control over these documents, like what the birth certificate was made out of, but you also mentioned Indonesia. There's even a cult connection here that actually connects
Yes.
to Obama.
I'll connect all those dots, and I do want to repeat what you guys just said. I want to make this very clear for posterity's sake, historical archive's sake. Sheriff Arpaio and Mike Zullo had or have had nothing to do with any investigation into Loretta Fuddy.
Right.
Now, as private citizens, I mean, they probably smell a little rat in some of this, but that's up to them to say
Sure.
what they think. I can speak to the camera and to your audience. I smell a big old rat in it. But again, I've not been a part of any official investigation.
Right.
It could turn out that it truly was a plane crash and she truly did have some stress associated and died with heart attack later. I mean, it could all turn out. But here's what we know that makes it strange. Because of what we know about the URL trails into there and into Jakarta, Hawaii. Now keep these in mind, folks. From Hawaii to Jakarta to Washington, D.C. While a man from Chicago was a senator who's now a president in the White House, Obama. Okay, make that connection, that loop. Then in the Arpaio investigation, we've got all of this, the paper trail that's coming out of Hawaii. It goes up on the website. Now we find out it's fake. But who gave the documentation to Obama's attorneys to bring back to the White House and to put it up there? A person by the name of Loretta Fuddy, who's now conveniently gone. Maybe the only person that could testify to, well, I was given stuff to give. I don't know. I'm just making this up.
But she's also. Go ahead.
Yeah, about Subud.
Yeah.
I know. I'm being
I'm all anxious
I'm
here.
being so dramatic about
Yeah.
it. You think I'm not even going to go there, don't you? But I'm going there.
Okay. All right.
It is dramatic because it's all true and it's so surreal that it's almost unbelievable.
Right.
But here are the connections. I remember I made this connection from Hawaii, Jakarta, Chicago, Washington, D.C., CIA. Now, tie it all together. Do a little research on the internet and here's what you find out. Loretta Fuddy, who mysteriously died in this plane crash, who was the woman that handled the documents that went to the White House that became the notorious fake birth certificate, she was directly tied to Barack Obama's mother. They were involved in a cult in Jakarta area of Indonesia together when they were younger called Subud, S-U-B-U-D. Did I spell that
correct,
correctly?
yes.
All right. Then Loretta Fuddy comes back to the United States, becomes the regional director, I think, and I may have these titles wrong, but she's a bigwig in the Subud cult.
Right.
Isn't it did you do some research? Wasn't she in the Chicago, Illinois area?
I don't know about
was.
that, but I know that she
Okay.
was like the director for the
But there
national
was this
chapter of the
connection
Subud
back to the family.
There's a connection back to Chicago, and I'm going to say to your audience, if I'm mistaken on that detail, please forgive me. I'm doing this by memory because there's so much information up here we've been looking at. But then Obama's in the White House. Well, who now, at this stage of all of their lives, happen to be working in the Department of Health birth certificate records in Hawaii? Loretta Fuddy, full circle. And then who happens to die in a plane crash when
Right.
nobody else dies in, or dies because of a plane crash, nobody else dies in? The woman that handled the documents, Loretta Fuddy.
Yeah,
Do you
and-
see what I'm saying?
Well, I
So-
do,
so-
and there's actually a scary kind of track record we won't take this program time to go into, but around some of these super powerful political families, there are long lists of people who have information that wind up, lots of them die in little plane crashes, or they have a heart attack after a plane falls into a lake and fails to wipe people.
Or falls into the ocean.
It sounds like
Yeah.
conspiracy theory, but statistically,
Yeah.
if you look around some of these families, you'd never find that many people around you, for instance, that have all died under mysterious circumstances that had information that could hurt you.
Right.
Right. So that's just.
By the way, no one has died that's connected to me that has information. Just want to make that clear. You're right.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things that sometimes there is a there, right?
And that's what I'm saying again. Arpaio and Zullo didn't have any official capacity in any of that. But I'm saying, as a radio guy and a pastor and a former lawman, and then knowing what I do know from the birth certificate investigation about CIA URLs, Zullo saying it traces back to Brennan, deep state, a coup, all of this is going on. The birth certificate's fake. Now I'm looking at the whole Fuddy circular connection from Hawaii, back to Hawaii, through Indonesia, through Washington, through Ohio perhaps, Chicago, back to Hawaii, and then she dies. I'm saying that's just too many connections and coincidences to be coincidental, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just my citizen opinion at this point.
Yeah, there are others who've done some research into that
Yes.
crash, but they'll have to speak for themselves as far as that goes. But you're right. There is a lot of smoke, let's say.
Yeah.
And certainly
So probably some fire somewhere.
Exactly. But the forensic investigation into the
Yeah.
document that was presented to the American people
Yes.
on the White House server,
It's a fake.
clearly.
It's a fake. And just think of this, just in case this has been too much information for people. Say, how do I even explain this to people? Well, first of all, give this digital, however it's being presented, thumb drive, DVD, and give it to other people to watch. But just think of this. Let's just really be simple. What are the chances that a man, you can give him any name, but it happens to be Barack Obama, America's first African-American president? That's a milestone in America. Now, knowing all that I know, I'm kind of upset at the dude and the process around him. But let's just pretend like he was just a good president, and which much of America thinks he was, and that his birth certificate's totally valid. Okay, what's the chances of America's first African American president? Nobel Peace Prize within weeks after taking office. I mean, all of these great accomplishments he would be accredited with. There's not a hospital in this nation that will sign an affidavit stating, by gosh, he was born here. We will put the reputation of our entire hospital on line. There's not a statue of him in front of any hospital. There's not a plaque on a wall in a lobby in a hospital saying this is where he was born. We're so proud to be the birthplace. There's not a state that says that. You'll hear the media saying, now Barack Obama, born in Hawaii, as if they're but there's no state governor's office or any place that's ever said. By the way, Governor Neil Abercrombie, Democrat, Obama supporter, ran on one of his platforms was, if you'll elect me governor, I will settle this birth certificate issue. I will go into the archives myself and pull his birth certificate out and show the world. He wins the election. He can't find it. He can't do it. He hems and haws, and finally he has to cover himself, and I'm sure he's getting pressure from Washington, D.C. now saying, you idiot. You idiot. I don't know, but I'm just thinking that's what they're saying. He comes out and says, well, I'm not allowed to pull it out and show it, but I've seen it. Trust me, it's there. And then he lost the election. I mean, he was one term. But he was connected to all of that, deeply connected. He was the guy that said, I was in Hawaii, I saw it when he was born, I'm friends with him. And then they find out, no, he only saw him when he was like 5 or 6, and his mama brought him from Indonesia to Hawaii. That's when he saw him for the first time.
Interestingly, it was Abercrombie who appointed Fuddy to the position of director of the Public Health Department.
That's what I'm saying. So it just, all these connections. Abercrombie appoints Fuddy, who's friends of Obama's mom, who handles the birth certificate. It just stinks to high heaven.
Well, Carl, I personally want to thank you for taking all this time to sit down and do this special report with Skywatch TV. And I wanted this because I know your involvement with the investigators and your background, but also because I have a feeling as we're moving towards the 2020 election, I mean, we could be a little over a year away from new investigations, indictments, and that this whole situation around the birth certificate could be a very lively talking issue in the not too distant future.
It's to me and to Sheriff Arpaio, who has said this to me privately and publicly. He has said it now. And I still converse with Sheriff Arpaio. And I call him on the phone and we talk. And he's called me and we talk. And Zulo and I talk probably 2 or 3 times a week still. So I'm telling you, this is the foundational issue of the biggest crime ever perpetrated. And getting away with that crime enabled the deep state to get away with all the other crimes.
Sure.
That's why they want Trump gone. And they wanted Arpaio in jail. And then Trump pardons Arpaio. I mean, this is just unbelievable. But I want to say to your audience, please hear me. Mike Zulo and I have always said publicly, and Sheriff Arpaio has always said this, he wanted to be the one to exonerate Barack Obama from the beginning. But Mike Zulo and I, since this information keeps piling up and we now know it's fake. But here's what we've always said. We are men of integrity. I want to protect my reputation. He wants to protect his. So we have always said, if somebody would give it a real hearing, a congressional report or DOJ or an FBI investigation under neutral people examining it, all they want is the truth. If they would do that to the depths that we've done it or deeper, and if they discover that we are absolutely wrong, we will apologize, back away from it, and say, we were just wrong. Wow, we're embarrassed. We were wrong. That's all we ask. We don't have to be right, but we know we are. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to say is, prove us wrong. This is huge. We're making an allegation against the United States government and the office of presidency that if it's fake, we're deserving of all kinds of retribution.
Mm-hmm. Well, so are the American people.
Yeah. I'm saying, prove us wrong. Mm-hmm. Prove us wrong. Don't just get on the news and say, oh, that's already been settled. See, they say that all the time.
Right,
Nothing's been settled. It's never been before a court. It's never been before a congressional hearing. It's never been before the FBI or the DOJ. No, it has not been settled. Quit lying. But I'm saying, settle it. Let's do it. Let's do an investigation. Look at all the stuff that Arpaio and Zulu have done for all these years and show us that we are wrong. And if you can do that, we'll back away. If you can't, you've got the crime of the ages on your hands. What are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Just if this seems like it's too big to possibly be real, the information you've just heard over the last hour and a half or so from Pastor Carl Gallup, just ask yourself this. Why don't prominent Democrats want to put it to bed forever? I mean, it's clear that what was put on the White House website 8 years ago, is clearly insufficient to settle the question. So why don't prominent Democrats want to put it to bed? Why don't prominent Republicans want to prove that it's fake? Neither party, both of which are involved in the deep state,
Complicit.
want to touch it. Mm-hmm. Think about that, and think about the implications for these United States of America. With Tom Horn and Pastor Carl Gallups, I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is Off the Record from Skywatch TV.